Call meeting to order August 19th, 2021. Mr. Moody, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Yes, sir. Dear gracious Lord, we thank you for this time today. Thank you for waiting having you. Such grace to be with our the spirit we have, Lord, to have us to use our your taste and understanding, Lord, wisdom as we get through the school year, Lord, and all these things that are happening not only here in the world and Afghanistan, but other places. We have those people there in trouble. Lord, I pray you just be with the teachers, Lord, the kids, and the things they're going through, Lord, and just be with us meeting today, Lord. Just make this easy. Christ way, Lord, as the message for our kids, and Lord, just not to make this easy, Lord, have us be good examples for us as well. And thank you for all your day, Lord, we'll do the best.
I'll lead the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, reports and discussion items. A is COVID community status update. Ms. Booth.
Yes, and as they make their way in, board members, in your packet, you will see an updated list of our daily quarantines for both staff and students. Behind that, or in your packet, you will see an updated Strong Schools North Carolina Public Health Toolkit, updated August 18th. Behind that, you will see the updated frequently asked questions that go with the toolkit. And behind that, you will see a COVID-19 model for local decision-making for determining mask policies. So I just wanted to share that that's for your information in the board packet. And then I would like to welcome Beth Booth, our public health director, and Loretta Eller to the school card.
All right, so it's been a couple of weeks since we've seen you guys, so I figured I'd go ahead and give you an update. As of this morning, in the last 5 days, we have had 15 positive children under the age of 18. We have seen 45 positive children in the last month out of 112 cases, which is about 27% of our cases. There was a presentation done yesterday by Dr. Cullen on the weekly COVID update from the state. The state has now seen a record number of child hospitalizations, and the new research put out says that you're about 400% more likely to catch COVID if you have not had the COVID vaccine. That's about 4 times as likely. So the vaccine is showing some pretty significant benefits. It does not stop you from catching the virus. It lessens your chances, and it greatly reduces your risk of hospitalization, especially to the point of an ICU visit. It's at about 95% effective against hospitalization. So that's what we're looking at right now. Vecino still comes weekly to offer COVID shots. It is on our Facebook page right now. They offer them this week. It's going to be tomorrow from 5 to 8 p.m. by appointment only. We also offer the COVID shots. We don't have the Pfizer. The Pfizer is the 12 and up. We offer the Moderna and the J&J, which are both 18 and older. If we have enough interest in Pfizer, we are happy to stock Pfizer. However, we do not have the ultra cold storage. So if we receive Pfizer, it puts them on a pretty tight deadline of when it has to be used. So if we have a clinic that we want to hold or have a large amount of interest aside from what Vecinos is providing in the county, we'll be happy to stock it. I will give you some updates as far as the masks in schools and how that relates to the quarantine guidance. My staff met with Angie and Rodney and the school staff, the school medical staff here, and it was decided to do a 10-day quarantine And for the students, that quarantine does not apply to the teachers, that the teachers still have to hold a 14-day quarantine or up to their employer. So we hold to the 14 days, but it is up to the employer how they choose to handle that. But for students, you're looking at a 10-day quarantine, and that's if they are exposed in the school setting. That does not include extracurricular activities or anything outside of the school, such as a household exposure. Those, it's a 14-day quarantine. The 10 days was chosen because the 7 days and a negative test, number one, the school would have to guarantee that they receive that negative test before they come back to school, and those other 7 days are mask mandatory. So if you've chosen to go mask optional, that teacher or the school would be responsible for making sure each child wore a mask for the remaining 7 days.
And we do not have capacity.
Exactly. So it was chosen instead to do the 10-day quarantine. If you do the 10-day quarantine, the mask is not required, and neither is a negative test. So we figured that was the best compromise in staying with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services recommendation and the CDC. So that decision was made last Thursday. So, yeah, does anybody have any questions with that information?
The only thing I have is I've printed off, I've studied this a whole lot. And it talks about exposure, and it says, and I even called the health department about this. Persons can complete a 10-day quarantine if the person is not presenting symptoms of the symptoms of COVID-19 after daily at-home monitoring, or they complete 7 days in quarantine if they report no symptoms during the daily at-home monitoring and the individual have received the results of a negative antigen or PCR molecular test. That's what I called the health department about. I was not sure on that. On a test taken no earlier than the day 5 days of the quarantine. Now, apparently it was decided by Angie and the health department, or Miss Knight and the health department, to let this part of the exposure be okay for teachers, but students could not get the test within the 5 days, and they really need to be in school and test negative for that and get back in school. That's out of the toolkit. It doesn't say teachers, and then it doesn't say students have to do a 10-day. It doesn't say either or. And on the last update that I had, I couldn't print it off, but it was on my phone, and I talked to Miss Knight about this because it was a concern. That you didn't put on there exposure to, the children had to stay out 10 days if they were exposed to a student that was positive for 10 days. You didn't put on there vaccinated or unvaccinated. And it's my understanding the vaccinated children were able to come to school with a mask on, but that was not in the update. And that was my concern.
Sure. That was not in the press release simply because I do try to keep our press releases as unwordy as possible. We actually handle all the close contacts in our office, so we are actually the ones that do all the background on them. So if they call, or we call them, or they contact us as a close contact and they tell us that they are vaccinated, then they are given the guidance that they can return to school. Their information is given to the school nurse, and they are told that they are vaccinated. So as far as returning with a negative test for students, again, the school probably is not going to have the capacity to make sure that at this point, close to 100 students are either receiving negative tests, coming back with masks, that kind of thing. It seemed to be the best compromise for the 10 days to not have to volunteer the test.
And as a matter of record, that was not a decision that was made between me and the health department. That was a decision that was made with the committee that was here last Thursday, which consisted of the people that Ms. Booth just mentioned, including your board chair. So that was not a decision that was made lightly, and it was also made because that is the capacity that we're able to handle with the staff that we have. We have 2 full-time nurses, And they had full-time jobs before the pandemic hit. So we don't have any additional help down here. We are looking into that. The state will be sending us someone. And once they get here, then they can take over some of that from our school nurses.
And the other piece to keep in mind, and I know it's not a popular choice, 14 school districts have changed to mask mandatory. And the huge advantage in mask mandatory is if the children are exposed mask on mask, no one quarantines. That's the bottom line. None of these children have to go into quarantine if they receive their exposure in the classroom. And everyone is wearing a mask. The children do not have to quarantine. That does not apply to the teachers because it is so infectious when it's a transfer from an adult to a child or a child to an adult. However, their return can be mandated by the school system. This is just pertaining to the children. But if it is mask mandatory, the children do not have to quarantine. But it has to be all children. So,
Now, if it's not, this was a committee and we were not, the other board members were not relevant in that committee, and I was not notified there was a committee on that.
And it's not necessary for me to invite the board to my meetings.
In other words, we were not relevant on that decision.
But that's not a board decision. So quarantine really is a decision that ultimately comes from at the health department. That's the authority of the health department to give us that guidance. The only authority that the school board has is whether or not we wear masks.
Well, if you all can make that recommendation, I think you ought to make the recommendation whether or not we're masked or not.
Well, that's not the authority of the health department. That's the governor gave that authority to the school board.
the authority for isolation and quarantine is in general statute, and it has been for decades. That is a communicable disease law, and it is actually referenced in your Strong Schools Toolkit on page 16. And it says that the local health authorities have the ultimate say in the quarantine. However, we did not want that decision to be made lightly, and we did want the opinion of the superintendent and Mr. Nelson on what exactly was going to be done. And we also wanted the opinion of the school medical staff. And so we convened last Thursday for a general consensus, because upon return, if you're going to do 7 days, the children all must be tested and they all must be masked. And at that point, that falls to the school to do. And they do not have the capacity to do so. And we didn't want to do a full 14-day quarantine, if that would be an option at all. So we settled on 10 days. And that is the local health authorities' rules to make that decision. So again, I did not want to make it without your input. And it was a compromise on our part. So, and that's the decision that we all decided to come to. But again, the masks, that's not in general statute. That's nowhere in communicable disease law to make that decision. And the governor chose to give that authority to you. My recommendation is still going to be for the mask, because that's what the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services recommends, and that's what the CDC recommends. It also gives your children the most normal that you will find, because they will not have to go home. So everybody wants them to be in school. I want my son to stay in school. My son is sit every day with a mask, and he is encouraged to wear it every single day, because I do not want him to get sick. And if it means that he can stay in school longer and miss less school, total advocate anyway. So that is the most normal you're going to find for these kids is in a mask. Otherwise, they will be sent home, and they will have to stay home for 10 days. And you'll have to make arrangements to either send packets home or remote learning or whatever the school decides to do to try to handle that. But at this point, between the schools, according to what Mr. Moody just gave me, you're already looking, like I said, in the last 5 days, we've had 15 kids positive, and you've got anywhere between 13, 12, 14 kids in quarantine. So, you know, and the number's only going to keep growing. We've had 45 kids in 30 days, 15 of which were in the last 5 days. So it's frighteningly infectious, and I don't see it getting any better right now. And again, if you stay mask optional, that's fine. If you go to mask mandatory, also fine. We can always revisit this. But we are at a peak right now that we are setting records every single day. We had 13 positives as of 10 o'clock this morning. Just today, 13 people have tested positive this morning.
Okay, I guess your update on your thing, on your website, because the 0 to 17 has been at 15 for quite some time, 15%.
Yep.
This morning, when I pulled it up, 0 to 17 was 16%.
Yep.
That's up 1%.
Yep. So that would be because it's been since the beginning of the pandemic. So we do not do that those graphs are from beginning to now. So we are at climbing percentage points because at this point in the last 30 days, it's almost 30%, which is starting that increase in that percentage for the entire pandemic.
And just to clarify, some of the information that comes from the state website is based on population percentages. Some of the information is not updated as some of our tests come through. But I can tell you, as a public health nurse that's been in this pandemic every day, these children are escalating to an alarming rate. I see it, I do the follow-up, I see the test results, and I do the phone calls. This is not a joke, it's not a number to look at and say that this is not happening. These children are becoming infected at a greater rate than what we saw in the last year. So it's real, and it is going to have an effect. And we have yet to see the result of school being in session. Next week will be the tell-all for where we're at for the beginning of school. And I can tell you, contact tracing is only as good as the information that the caregiver, the parent, or the positive individual gives us. And I'm here to tell you, we have an alarming rate of people that all of a sudden have no contacts. I can't dream that up. I can't pull those names out of the air. So if an individual is testing positive and they're telling me they have no contacts, that's all I have to go with. It's a sad fact, and it's not just Graham County specific, it is across the board. If we don't know who's been exposed, we cannot give them control measures. We cannot make them be responsible. But we can give you the recommendations to keep these children safe for the time that they're in school. And
Well, I can tell you, we're in a small town, and when someone's supposed to quarantine, we know someone, word gets out, they've got COVID, they're supposed to quarantine. If a lot of our children have no one to monitor saying, you're gonna stay at home. And I do know they are out in the community. They're out in the community wandering around is what they're doing. I saw it firsthand yesterday.
And that's what we're dealing with.
And that is
that's
what
why
we're dealing
seeing
with.
the rise.
Yes, it is.
And that's why we're seeing our death numbers go up, and we're gonna continue to see that go up. This is a pandemic, and this is something that none of us have been through before. But we as a health department have to make those decisions to protect the community. And this is what we're recommending. And it's not an invasion. I'm not trying to invade on anybody's privacy. You want to talk about invasion of privacy, be the person that calls the positive person. Individual has to tell them, you need to separate from your family in the house. You can't sleep in the bedroom with your spouse. You need to be in a different room. Yeah, that's an invasion of privacy, but if it saves suffering and lives, it's worth it. This is not numbers that have been concocted and pulled out of the air. This is real. And the last thing I want to do is come and sit before you to explain why a child died, because that's happening across the state line in Tennessee. And it's happening all around us. I don't want to be here in a few weeks and say we could have or we should have. This is the bottom line. It's the bottom line. It's our job to protect them, period.
Any other questions?
You know the number of hospitalizations right now for adults, kids?
We have in
discuss it in closed session.
All right, anything else that you need from us?
No, I prepared a statement that I would like to hear. If you would allow me to do that, I would appreciate it.
What is it you want to do?
I've done a lot of research and I think in closed session, it's something that I don't think it warrants being in closed session. I don't think my statement about my position warrants being in closed statement. If you would allow me to.
Are you going to read this?
I am going to read it because I have almost 2.5 pages that I have worked long and hard on.
Go for it.
Is that okay? Would that be okay with the board?
And just speak up so they can.
I will speak up. All right, these days there's plenty of reason to fear. And these days you can walk 2 paths. You can walk fear or you can walk faith. Now, as far as the COVID is concerned, the COVID virus is 0.125 microns. And health department, please correct me. And the N95 mask, which Miss Lovelace has gotten in over at the high school, and it does say N95, I think the state gave these to her, will filter down to 0.03 microns. Most viruses are 0.6 to 1.4. Anything below 2.5 microns is a very dangerous size. RSV, which is what most of our young children and babies have, has a length of 1 to 10 microns in length. And this is where, among young children, our hospitalizations are coming from. As stated before in the board meeting, I do not believe children are vectors of the virus. All these other coverings are like putting a chain link fence around your house to keep out mosquitoes. And I'm talking about these. This is in my car. It's got makeup on it. We have this. Miss Wash has on one of those. We have these. It has makeup on it. I have this embellishment, which a lot of people like to wear, the pretty mask, and that has makeup on it. Then we have these I think were given out at school, which possibly could help. And I know our children, I think they pull masks from children, even t-shirts, and test them for bacteria and viruses because they stick them in their car. They don't wash them. And they get them out of the glove compartment, they put them on, they come into school. Okay. We cannot control what goes on in our community. You can't mandate personal responsibility. But we can give our staff and parents the freedom to choose to wear a mask. Once again, society has turned to schools to attack the spread of the COVID because society is doing a poor job themselves. I can tell you when our students and staff enter school grounds and buildings, they enter an environment, and I'm talking loud because people say they can't hear on our recordings, where continuous sanitation measures are taken to the fullest. Our staff is very aware of what it takes to lessen the contact of any virus. And the COVID virus is not the only virus. Our nurses know who is sick, and they are sent home to quarantine and told to stay home until the quarantine period is over. This goes for all illnesses until you are symptom-free. Masks, in my opinion, take away a large part of a student-teacher's identity, making it difficult to engage students in instruction, even to the point of being able to communicate. I went over and helped at elementary the first day of school. And little kids were not talking loud enough that I could help them get to a room, so they had to pull their masks down so I could hear. If you want some sound doctrine and data, The rate of suicides among middle and high school students is up simply because of the depression the COVID has created. Now, this comes from the FDA website. The FDA does say, with or without a face shield that covers the wearer's nose and mouth, and I see a lot of kids with it right here, may or may not meet the fluid barriers or filtration efficiency levels. They also say, this is the FDA, shows that face masks, frequent hand washing, physical distance can slow these dangerous viruses. I am a member of this school board and would like to put in place a 30-day mask mandate with students and staff receiving a clean mask every day when they enter school. And that anyone, if we are going to protect our children to the fullest, if anyone is attending our school grounds, be it parent-teacher conferences, sporting events, a visitor, that they wear a mask to our school, and only for 30 days, to be revisited to see if this helps. Otherwise, my vote will be to continue with the underlined freedom and underlined to choose wearing a mask or face covering. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Now, if anything I said medically, which I get very passionate about this, if anything I said medically about this is wrong, let me know.
Anybody got anything they want to add or question?
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Wood.
Thank you.
Ms. Allen. All right, personnel, Ms. Knight.
Yes, during closed session, I'll bring to you names of substitutes for this year, and the existing substitutes and also new substitutes. Additionally, substitutes for the school nutrition, and then a couple position vacancies for a music teacher assistant at the elementary school and an ISS staff member.
Okay, supplement guidelines, athletic directors.
So, in the last board meeting, board member Mrs. Knott asked for not only athletic supplement, a list of those, but also those of anyone that receiving a supplement. And I have asked Mr. Green to just distribute those to you. And then the discussion will be before.
I just wanted to say that I was not strictly targeting coaches up.
No, you also asked for those of other people.
I did. Would you like for me to read that or no?
No, I mean, I think I've stated that you also asked for those of other people in the system that receive the supplement, in addition to coaches.
Okay, so Mr. Green's gonna give us,
He's just gonna distribute those
okay.
as asked.
What is he distributing? All the other information?
This document that you're receiving is the coaching supplements for the last 5 years.
If you've got extras, can you share that? Sure. Go ahead and distribute your next one.
Next would be documents that are compiled that are the principals supplements, assistant principals, superintendent, and band director supplement for the last 5 years.
I think the band director's on this one.
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Do you have anything, Mr. Green, from the schools themselves?
I do. There are some documents that in our office, they've supplied some reports. I think the reports that we have in our office, they're quite extensive. Those reports are called vendor history reports. We compile those reports from the schools each year so that we can determine whether we need to send 1099s to any contractors. Okay, that's a lot of data. I can bring one packet in here and it's that thick. Okay, that's been really difficult for the individual schools to take that data and segregate out payments to referees, to individuals in the school system. This report also includes payments to the vendors that they use. So you've got 30-some pages just at the high school for one fiscal year of these payments. So if you wanted to see those, we would need time to compile them.
Was that something that was our request?
There are some, I wouldn't call them supplements in those reports. An example would be if you pay someone who's not our employee to run the clock at the basketball games. Those payments are included in those reports. Okay, and that data, like I say, in the form that it's in, it takes a lot of work to filter out just what you're looking for those types of payments. We have, if I were to go get 5 years, there would be packets that thick of accordion files. I think what you're mostly interested in is the coaching supplements and also the supplements paid to our employees. And that's what these documents have for you there.
Who controls the supplements paid to our employees outside of the coaching supplements?
I think each individual school, if they have someone, whether it's an employee or someone who's not an employee, that they'll ask an individual to come in and run the clock for a basketball game. They have that control.
Is that paid out of local money or is that paid out of athletic money?
Athletic money.
Okay, so that's under your control.
What you have there, all of those supplements are paid out of local funds, out of the $1 million that we get from the county.
And that's what I'm interested in. Your athletic.
If it's a school employee, then it's paid through the central office. A time sheet's turned in, and then the athletic department
Exactly.
reimburses the central office for the funds they paid out.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. And you get your money from the ball games and things like that.
Yes.
So it's not, okay, I guess this money here, which is my understanding, $90,000, correct? That's what was on the budget.
That's how much is in the budget, all right?
I know that's not what it ends up being after, I guess.
Right, you're looking at fiscal year 21. We just finished that fiscal year on June 30th. I think if that's the top.
This is 2021.
2021. Those are the supplements that were paid out last year. Along with those supplements, those are paid to our employees. We also those were run through payroll. They have to pay Social Security tax on that, and it's also subject to the retirement matching, which at this point is 21.68%. Okay? 15 years ago, when we started doing this, the retirement matching was around 7%. So these supplements, because of that retirement matching requirement, those costs are going up, okay? It's a significant part of our local budget.
Michael, do you have one of these in front of you, Mr. Green?
I don't.
Okay.
I handed out other ones.
We have a line there, JV assistant football coach, $1,000, and there's not a name there.
Was not paid.
Excuse me?
It was not paid.
It was not paid?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We had a coach the previous year that had resigned. We did not replace that position last year.
Okay, assistant girls basketball coach, $1,200. There's nothing there. JV girls basketball, $900. Head boys, no, that is filled. That is filled. Assistant track, $300. Those are the ones I see. Let's see, assistant baseball, $1,100. Assistant baseball coach, $250. So I'm a little bit unclear on why they're blank.
I'm assuming that position wasn't filled at the time that the coaching supplements were developed. Is that correct, Mr. Madison?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, how is a decision made? Well, a book that I have, that I got from you, Mr. Green, including supplemental pay from local, federal, or certain state funds that are determined to be the amounts in addition to salary paid to individuals. When paid as a supplement from local funds, the salary supplement is based on a local board-approved salary schedule. If we're giving $90,000 to, I don't know, who do we give the $90,000 to? The high school? Because Ms. Wash has.
We pay these to the individual employee. This is a list of who we pay. We don't give anyone $90,000.
Who decides on this list?
That list has been like that. I've been here 15 and a half years. Who developed the list, I'm not sure, but it has.
I can't tell you who developed it, but I can tell you that in about 2000, I became the athletic director at the high school, served as athletic director for a little over 3 years. And at that time, this list was in our central office, and it was run, it was controlled by the superintendent at that time. And that superintendent passed it to me. At that time, the stipends came from up here. The superintendent did them, and they came and handed those out to me, for us to get signed. And that superintendent passed those to me and asked me to do those in the high school office. And that's what I began doing. And that was, I said 2000, maybe like 2003. I was the athletic director and assistant principal at the same time.
So you have changed some of these supplements.
So the only time that there have been changes made on these supplements have been at times where, there was one time we went and gathered information from the surrounding counties and looked at their supplements. Actually, we've done that a couple times, and we bumped them up based on what surrounding counties were being paid. And then there was a time, I think, when Mr. Carringer was the superintendent, that there was a statewide increase for all teachers, like 5% or something like that. And he would always, if the teacher pay went up 5%, we tried to increase the supplements 5% at that time. The only other changes that have been made throughout the years during that time was, one example would be, we actually had an assistant coach that was making more money than the head coach because they did the JVs too. So we took the pot of money that program was assigned and divided it so that varsity coach actually made a little bit more than the JV and assistant did, because they were the head of the program and they should have been the highest paid person for that program. Other things that have happened, like the track supplement, it was one supplement at one time for like $900, and they had 3 assistants and asked if it could be split between those 3 assistants. So at one time, there was actually 3 $300 supplements for track assistants, But last year, they only had 2 paid assistants, so.
And I can remember one, it was last year or year before, the middle school requested
Yes.
that the board allot money to an assistant coach for each of their
There
sports.
were no paid
But there
assistant
were no
coach
paid
positions in the
assistant
middle school
coaches,
until that.
And the board made the decision, that we were gonna do the $250 per assistant coach for the middle school, to compensate them a little bit to help.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any consistency at all with, to me, there's a lot of personal bias here, with people coming and going, you know what I mean? And I thought it would be a good idea to get a coaching resume and base, just because somebody brand new comes into that position, should they be making $1,800 more than someone that's been in our system coaching a sport and for a long time and had even college experience doing this? So I think a coach's resume would be a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to have line items that are blank with money there, and we need to go ahead, because I'm telling you, and I am not targeting any one person, I admire them tremendously for coaching, for what they have to put up with parents and students, and things are not getting any better to coach. And I know it gets really hard.
I mean, I would say that there's not one person in this room that would like to see all of our coaches make substantial more amount more money.
Well, I know.
They do not make enough. It's the worst paid position in the school system, period.
It is, but
Yes.
but we
If I
have
can make a statement too, you know, when people apply for these jobs, we do have to take applications. And as far as the middle school goes.
What do you mean apply for what jobs?
Any of, when we have openings in coaching, they fill out an application or a resume. They
Or
send something.
turn in a
to us,
letter of interest.
Turn in a letter of interest or something. But as far as the middle school, most of the time, we're going out trying to beg people to take these positions.
Well, I know we are, and
And
that's just
they
it.
know.
It's no different on the varsity level.
And
People are
this-
not lining up to coach, and they're definitely not lining up to come to Graham County to coach. I
And
can
it
assure you
is
that.
not parenting and kids, it's time. It's time away from your family that these people are spending. But it's not, I mean, we're getting applications, resumes, letter of interest. We're just, lots of times, we're begging people to take these jobs, and they know before they sign the contract what the supplement is. So, you know, it's not that they don't know.
But I still think this needs to be reworked, because we have assistant football coaches making as much as, well, as, let's see, I had this down as, head softball coach, like I say, we've got a head boys basketball coach making 25. We have a head softball coach making 1,800. We have a head baseball coach making 1,800. We have a head wrestling coach making 1,800. And we have, assistant football coaches making 2,000, 2,040, 1,000, 1,800, more than, and someone that's not even a school employee, of course, some of our school head coaches are not, 1,440. There's just too much inconsistency. Now, you're gonna tell me that football is the biggest sport, but if it's $90,000 that's coming from local funds, it doesn't make any difference if football is the biggest sport. We need to have, and to my knowledge, wrestling has more state championship trophies over there in that case than any other sport, as far as I know. And state championships. I think that's
They
right.
have one. team
And he's,
state
and this coach is making $1,800. But, you know, without getting into, and I know this has been changed, head football coach, $1,000, that's had to have been changed, you know, that's had to have been changed, that can't be per local around the area. Right?
That's a question that needs to be addressed in closed session for me to be comfortable answering. Just to be honest with you, because you're spouting things out, and it's not that, our personnel are related to
Well, but I'm
personnel.
just-
Everyone
and I-
knows who the head football coach is, the head basketball coach, the head wrestling coach, and you may not be saying the name, but that needs to be discussed in
Well,
closed
then,
session
okay,
before it goes anywhere else.
then Miss Ellen Davis needs to say we need to do this in closed session. I
would like-
guess. I mean, you had it in open session, and I didn't know how to address this in open session because I was told we were gonna have a working session on this. I was told, that was, and then the school board meeting got
Whether it's
changed.
a working
As well. It was-
whether it's a working session or a board meeting, a working session is done in the open.
Okay, well,
Now,
then,
if you want some legal advice from me, I'll do that, which I would like to give, but in terms of salaries and supplements, that's not,
I guess.
closed session, but let me finish.
Okay.
Whether it's a working session or a special call meeting or regular meeting, a discussion of salaries, personnel, budgets, what comes out of central office is open session. But if you're gonna start denigrating staff members or employees, I'd like to give some advice in closed session.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Mr. Green. So the $90,000 goes to whoever to decide? No, it doesn't. So we need to maybe rework this.
So it's based on these positions.
This $90,000 is paid to these coaches through payroll individually. That $90,000 doesn't go to the high school or the middle school or anywhere.
But but personnel changes, correct? Correct, Mr. Matheson?
Yes,
Personnel
and there have
changes.
been times throughout the years where a new coach came in and maybe due to raises and different things like that, the previous coach with their experience, say they made $2,000, a new coach came in and the starting for the head coach was $1,800 previously, then we went back to that. That has happened over the years based on, the experience and different things like that.
You mean it's gone back to what?
To like the 1,800 for that person to start at that, like a starting point. So, I mean, it has, at different times it has been adjusted.
Well, I guess because of the sensitive issue of some of the things that are on here of new coaches that have come on, and I've not had a chance, I just got this, I've not had a chance to look at this to see if they have gone back, if it has been lower based on whatever. But we have a lot of coaches working hard to put on clinics and that sort of thing. Now, and I don't know if this is something, little kids clinics, I think wrestling does it, I think football does it. Do what?
Those are fundraisers.
Those are fundraisers, or those are not required in the scope of the job.
That's not part of
That
being
is
a
not part of
coach.
their job. If they choose to do that, they choose to
That's
do
their-
that.
Raise money for their program.
They can raise money for their program, or they can.
Or they can- they can do it
in the community.
And they can do it and put the money in their pocket.
Oh, they can?
Absolutely, they can have a camp, yes,
They have.
and they have.
And they can have a camp at school and use our school
And
facilities.
and at times when they've done that and put it in their pocket, then they have been charged, for using our facilities. At
That is
times.
not in the scope of.
What do we charge for using
I
our
have,
facilities?
I'm not over facilities, they have to.
I don't know, I mean.
Who does that?
It's not $75, I think, is, Jim, that's just a guess, I think that's what it
That's
is.
a standard fee.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be used as a fundraiser.
So they can use things as a fundraiser. Can they
Yeah,
sell stuff at
coaches all
school?
over western North Carolina do.
And they can sell stuff at school for fundraisers.
Not for themselves, if they're selling something for a program, then that's program money.
Okay.
But if they run a camp, for instance, I'll give you an example, this on when I was the head boys basketball coach, every summer that I was the coach, we ran a kids camp where we had second graders all the way through like upcoming ninth graders in camp. Normally had 70 or 80 kids. I did that, and I was allowed to do it on the work days at the end of the school year. So as soon as school got out, we had a camp. Well, I used that money to help bolster my basketball program. That money went into my basketball account because I was allowed to do it on those work days when I was also being paid as a teacher at that time.
Yes.
So, I mean, it would have been double dipping. I mean, if I had been doing it another way. If I would have been pocketing that money myself, that would have not been ethical. So that money went into boys basketball to be used to buy shoes for kids, different things like that. Had I waited and did that camp later in the summer, then I could have said, okay, I want to rent the gym, and I could have took their $40 fee and split it between the people that helped me do camp and paid myself for it.
So if they're being paid as a teacher or whatever.
You're not allowed to do that during teaching time, no.
I mean, if they're being paid during their employment,
Right.
they're not allowed to
No.
do, are you talking school hours or you talking?
School,
Anytime.
no, school hours.
Let's say if they're 11 or 12 months and they're doing that, they have to put it back in the program,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. Okay, because I think most of our coaches do that.
Yes.
I know I have been trying to visit, when I know I've been trying to visit, I went over to Coach Ford's little camp he had and was watching the kids.
Right.
I missed Miss Phillips's volleyball. She did that really quick after school was out. I went to Miss Knott's little cheerleading camp, and I think Mr. Ford is going to have a little kids basketball camp.
Yeah.
So you're saying that money needs to be put back into the program, correct?
Well, if it's during school hours, yes.
What are you calling school hours?
Well, his work day would be from his,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying, 8 to 7:30 to 3:30.
Yeah. If they did it on,
If it's after school hours, then
if
that's
they
his
did it
personal
on a
time.
Saturday,
That's his personal time.
okay, okay,
Or anybody's personal time.
yeah, okay.
Right, and we don't have to let anybody, it's no different than if we have a AAU team that practices. We don't make them all pay for the gym every time they use it.
No, I understand.
Because it's good for children, and that's why we're here.
It helps our program.
It helps our program grow.
It does.
And that's why we allow those things to happen, because if we were very big sticklers, every time we had an outside AAU team, a volleyball team, a basketball team, use our gym, they'd be paying $75 a day. But that's us working with the community to make it a better place for our kids.
This is the old one. Has a new one come out? Are you working on a new one?
No, ma'am. We have not started the new one, due to
Because-
this board meeting.
It would do what?
This because, I realized that there could be changes, so I have
Well,
not
it was
started.
brought to my attention that we have added positions and added months of employment, so I don't know. I do know, but I don't think this fulfills the whatever we need, and I really don't think we need to have blank spaces. If we're gonna have blank spaces, let's give this to our head coaches.
Tonight, I will address that. The problem with that, for instance, when this document came out, and this is my fault that I did not go back in and put, for instance, like middle school baseball on there. They had not hired a baseball coach when this process was done. And when I went and I had to print a contract for Mr. Nelms, and I printed him the contract with that amount, but I just didn't go back and put the name in. That position was filled last year, as was the assistant position, I think. But the JV girls basketball was not filled. Last year we didn't have a team, so there was no reason to fill it. And that assistant football coach position was not filled either last year.
Well, without.
We just did, they had no one to fill it. That was the
Without
problem.
doing, without stepping on any more, whatever I'm doing. I guess maybe we probably do need to discuss this in closed session, some of this. Because this doesn't seem, and there's some other things I want to ask, but if I do, then people are gonna know.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate if I could ask you in closed session.
And I'll be happy to answer anything that you ask in closed session.
And try to figure out how the process of this got taken away from us, since this is our audit book.
That is,
No, that's not.
Ms. Knott, that is called the allotment policy manual.
Yeah, right.
And I think a lot of that was shifted from the high school when they started, the state started focusing on, school-based decision-making, and it kept some micromanaging from happening, and that's when the shift was made.
And it's no different, we would send an allotment, we send each school an allotment for supplies and materials, from this office. And we do not have to sign every purchase order that is done, because that is a school-based management decision.
Yeah, each individual school receives an allotment from our state allotments. There's PRC 19, which is small school supplemental funding, and there's PRC 61, which is instructional supplies. We give each individual school an allotment based on a formula, so there's no favoritism at all. It's based on a formula. If we want to come up with something with these coaching supplements that's more standardized, that's what we can discuss. And like it says in the allotment policy manual, the board can vote as a whole to do that. Now, how you do that is up to the board. But if you come to that conclusion and it's more standardized, then we have to stick to that, and I'm fine with that.
Let me, you say you give an allotment to the schools. I realize you give an allotment to the schools, but is it for, for example, would it be for Ms. Wash to be able to give somebody some money, an individual teacher or staff member money?
For instructional.
It's for instructional supplies.
So it's not for salary?
No.
Okay. But see, to me, it seems like we're giving the $90,000, or this has fallen into Mr. Matheson's lap of no doing of his own.
No.
It's fallen into his lap to have to decide about these.
Well, I really didn't decide anything.
About these.
It was yes, it was.
Well,
late
you
before
know,
I
I think it's something that is broken. I really think it's something that's broken that needs to be fixed. And I'll be honest with you, micromanaging is me telling you how to do your job, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. Micromanaging it, which the state does a really good job at, by the way. Telling us how to do our job. Micromanaging is just me being able to, myself and the rest of the board understanding how we came to this. The knowledge is what I want.
Right.
And that knowledge is not micromanaging, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
It's
again,
not.
I'm very happy to go in the closed session if you choose to do that and answer any question, and, be happy to explain.
Closed session, if I may, again, is discussion of allotments, whether it's athletic, band, whether it's a school, we are a school-based state. And so whether it's the allotments for various schools for supplies. My recommendation is, it's not a closed session item, it's an item we don't have enough information. And my recommendation is not to go into closed session, but to assign it to, I'm sorry, David, or Lester David, a committee, something to bring more information to discuss this without denigrating anyone, but just look at overall as a board. You're school-based, so you can't micromanage, but you can look at a lot more.
What the standards are, what the rationale behind the position.
And that's
are,
why
what
we
you do
need
it,
more
and
information.
Make it.
And going into closed session and you'll get it for us. We need to David, listening to David was wonderful, the understanding that it's been in the high school since '03. Well, that's a heck of a long time. So I think that, we just need to pull together the information. Is my recommendation.
Can I make a motion to have the superintendent designate to the athletic department the establishment of standards for athletic contracts? Can I have someone make a motion?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Have the superintendent, Ms. Knight, designate to the athletic department the establishment of standards for the athletic contracts.
Well, who is the athletic department? Because when you go to the website, you don't get anybody.
So that would begin with Ms. Walsh. That would, and you always have to involve principals because they are the school-based administrators of their athletic programs. So Mr. Matheson is involved. I think that you've got to have your coaches involved in some of the input of this. Stuart Nelms is the middle school athletic director.
I'm making a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Did you vote?
I will say, I can just say, and I voted for it, but as far as I'm concerned, these folks will be.
No, not September 7th.
Yeah, there's no way that you can work on a structured program in a few days.
Can you come back to the
In
board?
September.
The only question I have is we do have some individuals that that may be due to receive supplement payments. And so that's the only thing I
Well,
hate dragging it
And it
out.
may be that you set this for effective a certain date at a later time.
Supplements for fall sports pay in November,
Okay.
November payroll.
However, you do have people that are working under the assumption that their payment would be the same.
So, yeah, and I mean, I have a real issue with that. I mean, if $90,000 is the amount that we have, you know, and I've got a coach that's been making $2,500, and, I mean, I have a problem with that to cut his pay, and that's what he's signed a contract for years to be doing and to make. That's not fair. So the question is, if we set this up and it's more than $90,000, can the board absorb that?
No, the board will not be absorbing any.
Okay, so, I mean, you understand where that creates a real issue. I mean, I can't have coaches walking out saying, hey, I made more last year than I did this year. We don't have people do it. I mean, we don't.
There has already been plenty of information across the state about coaching contracts. My recommendation is the school year's here, you do your coaching contracts on June 30th. If you break a coaching contract, you go through a lot of hoops. So, except with very few exceptions, you can break one. My recommendation is the school year's here, coaching contracts are in effect until June 30th.
And they've not gone.
But they've not been signed.
They've not been
The
signed.
school year's here.
I
They're
understand.
already implementing those on good faith that they're gonna have a contract.
Exactly.
And give this, whatever's been going on for the last millennium, is going to be changed. We need information, and it's not closed session information, it's just solid rock information like David was talking about, or Lester's talking about. If you're gonna do, if you're gonna break it, so to speak, and do something else, or change, give it a reasonable amount of time, please. And the coaching contracts will be effective through June 30th. That's my recommendation.
I think we'll give them a year to work it out. If there's issues, I mean, this is something, we can't ask you to do this to every month, right? I think so. And I would say carry it through. My recommendation would be to amend the motion we had to give this fiscal year to let them study and come back with a.
I don't know if you need to amend your motion, you're just giving them guidelines. It's not going to happen this school year, but they need to be bringing information to you for June 30th.
That's all.
I guess I don't understand, if we're working, if it's local money, can the school board not work collaboratively with Mr. Matheson and Ms. Walsh?
Every time the school board gets together, we're paid. So
We're going,
we're paid. If we sit together like this, we're paid. I don't say it's going to need to work collaboratively.
well, can, I
School
mean,
board works through your superintendent.
That's what we got.
You have to direct your superintendent. You can't really direct your principals, assistant principals, and teachers. Now, they're accountable to you, but the board works through its superintendent.
So you're
We're
saying-
not here on committees.
okay.
I want to stress to you, the board is one. The board is one. And if you all are going to be on a committee, you all five show up and you announce the meeting. A Superintendents are not on committees. Superintendents are not on employment committees, for example. Boards pay big bucks to try for, and a board member wanting to sit on an interview committee for a teacher. It doesn't work that way. You are one. So one of you are going to check in on a committee, you better be on fire.
But I'm on the,
And if I sound, I am a member of a number of organizations, and I get lawsuits across my desk all day long.
so I'm
And
good.
I always inform Angie about what just happened in Charlotte. The same thing that happened here. So just remember you're one. So if one board member tools into a meeting, he has to be fired because you are one. And if the board sees something they don't like, let's say this on this committee, you've given them some instructions about ADs, principals, and coaches. Maybe not all the coaches on the committee. Okay. You direct your superintendent to oversee that the committee is as the board has
So
recommended.
maybe I can give an update.
That is your one person. You can't go talk to David. A board member can't tell him to do something, but you can sure tell your superintendent all day long.
As
Go
a
to
body,
David.
as a body, we can't.
As a body, as one, as a body, and go talk to David and tell him, this committee isn't the right makeup or something. So you can't go to David, none of you can, your superintendent can't, because you told your superintendent that the committee's not right. You are one, you're one, and that's just a great way to look at it. You're one.
Am I
And so
okay?
you're all one right now, and you can instruct your superintendent that this committee needs to happen. The AD, principals, and few.
And that's what we just did.
Yeah, you did, you set some parameters, through your superintendent.
Right.
Am I okay then serving on the infrastructure of the middle school?
Well, but you're not
as a-
serving on it, you're just
Or
showing up for
representative.
well, but you're just showing up for information, you're not making
Okay.
any decisions.
I'm not making it, you're right.
And
You shouldn't be saying anything
By invitation.
No,
Or requesting.
Right. Yeah, I think the
So
question,
if
anything
it's
was
requesting,
changed,
it has to come as a request from the full board.
that would be correct.
I trust you guys enough and got faith enough in you to do what we ask. I do. Yeah.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Pursuant to the provisions of North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, parentheses A, parentheses 3, and 143-318.11, parentheses C, I move the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session to receive advice from Ms. Ellen Davis, attorney for Graham County Board of Education, which advice comes within the purview of the attorney-client privilege. The advice will be general legal advice about legal issues or legal matters. Pursuant to the provision of the North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, parentheses C, I move that the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel matters as defined in and allowed by the North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, parentheses A, parentheses 6, the North Carolina General Statute 115C-321.
I have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? We are now back in open session. Action items, Ms. Knight.
Yes, I recommend that you employ the list of substitutes as presented.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the substitutes as listed for all three schools?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
I recommend that you employ Selena Jones as a child nutrition substitute.
Do I have a motion to employ Selena Jones as a child nutrition substitute? Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
I recommend that you employ Lori Aldridge as an elementary music teacher assistant.
Do I have a motion to employ Lori Aldridge as the elementary music teacher assistant? Do I have a second? All in favor?
I recommend that you employ Amanda Ferdano Orr as an ISS teacher.
Do I have a motion to employ Amanda Ferdano Orr as the ISS teacher? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Is that it? Ms. Knight, are there any announcements? Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Do I have a motion to leave the mask mandate as optional with a exception of a number 10% of either staff or students testing positive or being quarantined? And then to be reviewed at the next board meeting,
Or prior to that time, if it's the situation.
or prior to that time if need be.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Is that it? Okay. Now, Ms. Knight, are there any announcements?
Unless we reconvene for mass discussion prior to this, your next scheduled board meeting will be regularly scheduled meeting September 7th at 10 a.m.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?